Hello lovely people, welcome back to another book chat. So today I was thinking about kids books, and I was actually looking for something to read aloud again, but I seem to have, with my 2 reading alouds, I seem to have kind of run out of things now. And also Little Fairy Muse wouldn't cooperate. She was like, no, it's too warm to sit on your lap, human. I'm not coming anywhere near you. So yes, so what that left me thinking about was the books that we read as kids. And I think a lot of them are so fantastic because when we read them now, we can really dive back into their worlds really easily. So the ones that come to mind would be obviously The Hobbit, because that's just so easy to dive back into. The Moomin Trolls for me, and I read one of those really recently, and it was just straight away back to this amazing magical world of just smallness and just that weird sort of sadness and happiness, and it was wonderful. It felt exactly like when I read it when I was a kid. So those books are really, really precious, obviously. But there's also the books that we read which evoke our childhood rather than the world of the book. And I think maybe for some people, just going on the popularity of it, Calvin and Hobbes is a little bit like that. Okay, I'm using book loosely, they're still in books. For me it's not so much because I didn't discover them until I was older, and also they do definitely bring up the idea of an American childhood, which is obviously very different for me. But there's a lot of wisdom in them, which is why I justified buying a really beautiful box set of them. Yeah. Anyway, the ones that do this for me, you may or may not know from reading my blog, I grew up half on a boat and half in New Zealand. And when I lived in New Zealand, we lived a lot of the time on a farm. And New Zealand farms are, even today, I think that they're still quite interesting and quirky and very odd places. And they're full of characters which are instantly recognisable if you have grown up in New Zealand. And most people I knew ended up with pet lambs and things like that during the lambing season, and that was just quite normal. Nobody thought about it. And you always knew the farmer because he was wearing stubby shorts and gumboots, so wellies, and he was normally driving a quad bike, and he had a dog on the back of it, and it was just, that was, yeah, it's a stereotypical image, but it was also the image that I grew up with. And when I was a kid, there was a wonderful cartoon strip in New Zealand, and it was called Footrot Flats. So, if you are from Australia or New Zealand, you will know Footrot Flats, I'm sure, unless you're younger than me, which is entirely possible. I don't remember exactly when they stopped running. I think it was in the 90s or something like that, but if you were around before then, you would have grown up with them as well. So, I only have a couple of books here, which I've collected along the way. My dad does have a full collection of them, so I read them when I go back sometimes. And where they're quite wonderful is everything that is based around the dog. It's pretty much everything comes from his point of view. And he's this lovely character where he really cares about all the other animals on the farm. He is an absolute scaredy cat. He's terrible with everything. And there's also a very big rough cat called Horse, who's a wonderful hero as well. There is the farmer next door who has a tree growing up through the middle of his house because he refuses to cut it down, and he rescues every animal he can find, and it's wonderful. It's full of characters. It is very, very New Zealand. So if you do come across it and you're not from New Zealand, it might just seem really bizarre, or it might be really interesting to read. So yeah, so it's things like this, you know, it talks, a lot of it is based around things like the farming, the lambing season. So, you know, dogs very upset here because Walter's playing rugby, because obviously that is the other New Zealand passion. There's ones about, you know, fishing and the eels and just all sorts of things, and they're just really, really cool. And for me, when I read them, it really takes me back to childhood, to being on the farm when I was sort of from quite young through to 7. We left there, moved on to the boat, and then we were back again there for a while as a teenager. But for me, it really evokes those preteen years, that coming up towards 7, when we used to have pet lambs, and I'd go and help with the lambing and all these things that were just so familiar, and these take me right back. So, by talking about these, what I was hoping to do is to ask you what books really evoke your childhood. And like I say, rather than ones that would take you into that same world they took you when you were a child, the ones that take you to your childhood, or kind of an idealised version of it, I guess it is really. And I would love to know. So yeah, pop them in the comments below, and yes, yes, thanks for listening. See you soon. And yes, I was going to show you one cool final thing, but it's really hard because the pictures are kind of small. So we'll just see you next time. Thanks, bye.